Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
Clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Welcome to the Dead Podcast. I'm your host, Desi, and on this podcast, I discuss all things spooky and weird, from ghosts, demons, religion, to folklore, urban legends, true crime, and all things paranormal, with some horror movie reviews sprinkled in. So join me on this spooky ride.
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. So, I got a couple tales here I'm working on, and this one actually piqued my interest. Now, this tale here, we're going to venture over to Australia. So this case is pretty brutal. It's not good, and I'll admit that right now. So, I'm going to touch on the subject of rape, abduction, and murder. So, we'll see how much detail we can venture out throughout this together, right? Now, this tale we'll talk about here is the Bega School murders. Now, this involves two girls, Lauren Margaret Berry, she was 14 years old, and Nicole Emma Collins, she was 16 years old. And the two were from Bega, New South Wales, Australia. So, I guess I'll give you a little bit of detail on the place here. And just a little bit about the girls here. Now, Lauren was born October 11th, 1982, in Bega Valley Shire, New South Wales, Australia. She died October 6th, 1997, in Victoria, Australia. Now, her parents, there was Mother Cheryl, Father Garrett, and she also had a brother named Nathan, so he would have been around 17 at the time. Now, Nicole Emma Collins was born November 14th, 1980, born the same place as Laura, and died the same date as well, October 6th, 97. Now, Nicole's parents were Delma and Graham. She had a sister named Liza. She also has some, stepsisters and brothers. They were Brett, Becky, Trudy, and Benjamin. Now, the two girls were just full of life, and it's just a really tragic fucking thing that happened to them both. My sympathy definitely goes out to the family here, these two girls. This isn't going to be a good fucking tale at all, folks. Now, these two went missing on October 5th, 1997, and their remains were found 5 weeks later. Now, Lauren was really close with her brother, Nathan. The two had a special bond. They kind of grew over the years, right? While they were living in Bega here. So Bega is a pretty small town, quiet. You can go to get away, clear your head, and all this stuff, right? So, this town here is very well known for, the manufacturing of cheese. There was a gold rush back in the 1880s here, and the Bega Dairy Cooperative Limited had set up in the 1890s, so that's when, the cheese factory kind of went up and coming. Lots of cool stuff to do up there. You go pick up your wheel of cheese or whatever, you go picnic on the countryside. And there's a bunch of other spots to go chill at too. There's Mumbulla Falls, Margarita Inlet, that's for fishing enthusiasts and shit. There's the Pioneer Museum. It's just a nice, quaint little spot to visit, right? There's tons of lush pastures, there's beaches. So it's the spot to check out if you're in the area. Now, the two girls were abducted from the town of Yass. This is a little on the outskirts of Canberra. So this is a 60-kilometer distance between the two places. Now, on the night of October 3rd, 1997, Nicole Collins, her father, had set up a campsite near White Rock in Bega. So the father and Nicole set all this up for her and her friends. so they could kick back the Labor Day long weekend. Now, it wasn't far from the family home, probably about 3 kilometers. And while they were up there, they had to call home or whatever, right? So they would regularly do this, because they wanted to make sure they were safe up there when they were camping. And their dad would actually call them to check in and whatnot. And these are just normal things that parents do to make sure that their loved ones are okay and that they're safe. Now, Labor Day weekend here is just a big deal, right? Because being a public holiday in all the states and territories of Australia, lots of people celebrate it. The reason for that is because it's to commemorate the achievements of the Australian labour movement. Now, in short, they celebrate the origins of the 8-hour day movement here. So there's 8 hours for work, 8 hours for recreation, and 8 hours for rest. Now, it's celebrated here in more than 80 countries, so it's a pretty big deal, right? Everybody knows about Labor Day. Now, back at the campsite here, all the girls and friends were together, hanging out, doing everything that they should, right? So this was up in a place called White Rock in Tathra, Bega Valley. So Tathra here is like a seaside town on the Sapphire Coast. Has a population of a little over 1,600 people. There's a wonderful beach and everything like that. There's a wharf museum. There's walking tracks. There's trails. And it's a little known fact here that the Bega River flows into the sea at the northern end of Tathra Beach. So Tathra here is said to mean beautiful country or place of wildcats. So that's the native meaning for that. So this place here was first settled by the Europeans around the 1820s and the 1830s. And there's tons of sites to take in or whatever, right? The area is also served by a local bus company here too. So if you can't get a ride, the Sapphire Coast bus lines, originally, they run pretty swiftly through town. Originally it was the Daly family who ran this. So that was under the Tathra bus service that ran from 1982 to 2013. So there's a little fact for you. Around 9 p.m. on October 5th, Nicole and Lauren had left the campsite to go to a party where Nicole's ex-boyfriend was. Now, Nicole wanted to meet up to try to see if they could get back together or whatever, right? Because there was a few girls up there with their boyfriends, so maybe she kind of got lonely or whatever, right? Now, the main road here they reached, and they walked for a few kilometers. Now, her brother Nathan was up there, but he had his own wheels or whatever, but he was hanging out with his group of friends. He didn't really want to bother his sister and everything, right? So, it wasn't really too far for them, right? I mean, it was far enough, that they get to where they're going or whatever, right? But he just wasn't around at the time. So the two girls had left, so they wanted to go hit the party up. So it was about a few kilometers walk, and unfortunately here, this would be the last time that they were seen. Now, upon the way to the party here, they encountered two fuckwits named Lindsay Beckett and Leslie Camilleri. So, Leslie here, this guy was born May 31st, 1969. He was born in Liverpool, New South Wales, Australia. And he's a kind of tall fella too, he's 6'1". And a little background on him here, he met his biological dad when he was about 13 years old, so he grew up mostly with his mom or whatever. And he was born to a family of 6 children. Now, I'm guessing, the whole lack of having a father totally messed with him during childhood, because he was in and out of juvie here for pretty much, his whole growing up years. So he was in there for, theft and vandalism and shit. He was socially awkward. He would have explosive outbursts here. There was some destructive behavior with him. And he would escape juvie a couple times too, during his stay in the institution here. So this was when he was 10 years old, and again at 12 years old. So he would mostly hang around with street kids or whatever, so he was a punk kid. So he would hang around the King's Cross area of New South Wales. Alright, King's Cross here. So this has a population of almost 5,000 people. You throw in some neon lights, the odd little bit of crime, and go check it out. So, This is kind of like a little red light district here, more so back in the 1990s. Eventually, since authorities had caught up to this guy again here, then he was taken to children's court for all his like petty shit he was doing, because he was like just a little poor kid growing up, right, just causing crimes to get by. So he was jailed until he was 15. And then the next guy here, there's Lindsay Honey Beckett. So this guy was born on March 27th, 1974. He grew up in New Zealand. And he lived in the Bay of Plenty. This is in the town of Opotiki. So he grew up in a pretty poor area. So he grew up in his, up until his teen years or whatever there. So he made a move to Australia. So personally, I don't really think it mattered where this piece of shit had moved to, because this was going to happen to someone, right? He was just a danger, like, to everybody. Like, during his life here, he spent his time breaking into cars. He'd rob places, people. He didn't give a fuck who you were. Didn't care who we hurt either. And then, even a little bit after, like, all his crimes and shit, he ended up meeting a young mother here. This was Laura Lee Tatt. And they started living together. So over the course of their, like, lovely time together there, he would repeatedly rape and beat Laura. So eventually, they had 3 kids together here. Ethan in 1993, Annalise in 94, and Leenzia in 1995. So all in all, I guess, like, this guy was just a piece of shit over the years. Like, these are the 2 dipshits here that would end up beating up with these girls while they were on their way to the party. So, I mean, like, maybe bad timing, I guess. What if they would have been, like, a few minutes later than seeing these guys in their vehicle or whatever, right? So these 2 men were in a Ford Telstar. Now, production for this, they actually deemed the name of the vehicle after a Telstar communications satellite here. So apparently, it's such a good car, it's out of this world, right? So this car was in production from 82 to 99, and all while driving around before meeting up with these girls here. The men had been doing crystal meth, they were drinking booze, doing heroin, so they were all fucked up. Now, being all fucked up on these drugs, like, they came into contact with the young girls, so they kind of coerced them to get into the car, and they told them that they would drive them to the party here. But obviously, like, these poor girls here, like, they got in the car, they were taken for a ride or whatever, right? Now, I'm kind of iffy on, like, the whole thing, if they got into the car willingly, because, I mean, like, that's a lot of drugs to be messed up on, and I'm assuming you could tell what a person's behaving like while on those drugs, too. But, maybe these guys were violent, they just grabbed them and threw them in the car, who knows, or maybe they got in willingly, right? But, as both dangerous natures these men were, like, they definitely wouldn't have taken no for an answer anyways. So the girls had entered the vehicle, like, kind of willingly, I guess, before they did, I would say, but I don't know. There was a TV that was in the back seat here that they were watching. It was a pink portable television here. So what they did with that is they tossed that on the side of the road, like they took it out, put it on the side of the road. This was to make room for the girls to get in. Now, everybody started to, talk a little bit. Then they took a drive. And this right here, folks, would be the last drive that they would fucking go on. The vehicle drove around here for a bit. They reached Tathra Beach, and this is where everybody stopped to chat a little bit, and then the 2 men drank a couple beers. So they would return to the area here around the campsite here. That's what they said anyway. They're like, hey, we'll drive you around, and we'll go here, we'll go there. So when they were on the road here, going back to the campsite, the car kind of bottomed out on the gravel road. Like, guess they hit a rough patch. So when I say, like, they bottomed out, it means that this had, like, they hit the road, and it put increased force on your vehicle's suspension on the uneven road. So here, Camillery here got, like, kind of pissed off, wicked angry at the girls. So what the 2 girls didn't know is before they got into the vehicle, that these 2 fuckheads here had the child locks on. like, so they couldn't open the rear doors. So they were stuck, like, you had nowhere to go, and they could only be opened from the outside. So it was just pretty much crazy now. So, like, I guess they're starting to wonder, like, what the hell's going on, right? Now, this to me here means kind of like that the two men had no plans of letting these ladies escape at all. So he then pulled out a knife, and then he began to threaten the girls, so he was waving at them and shit. And then the other guy here followed the leader, because he was kind of, monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. So he produced a knife too, and he just said, "Do as Les says." So this guy Beckett here, so like I said, he just wanted to kind of follow the other guy, right? Like, it's kind of like Leslie had a little bit of a tough guy persona maybe, and he was kind of drawn to that, so he would just do as he kind of did, right? But Beckett did pretty much everything this guy said anyway. Or, well, I don't know, it's just maybe because he thought Leslie was cool or something, right? But there's nothing cool about threatening some schoolgirls with a fucking bunch of knives. And now the two girls, like, were just starting to panic, right? But they had fucking knives right at them, right? So instead of returning the girls to the campground, they were taking another route. So they went down an old land dump road. This is located not far from where they lived. Now, both girls were attacked and raped. And there's not much that could be done. Like, these two men were fucking ruthless, right? They were all fucked up on drugs and everything. And this act occurred in Callaroo on Wallagoot Road. So this all happened. It was fucking horrible. And then the vehicle fired up, and they drove a little bit more here. So this time they went to the town of Murrumbula. And then the car stopped again at Ben Boyd National Park. And the two girls endured this act again, and they were assaulted. So then, shortly after, the car fired up again, and they drove to the town of Eden. Now, the men did the same act again, and then after a while here, Leslie had told Lindsay to drive the car, and Leslie got poor Lauren to perform acts of oral sex on him in the back seat of the car. So the car had drove towards Orbost. This is like an early settlers town. So they turned off, and they stopped down at a place called Wingan Point, and this is down down by the river or whatever. And the girls were assaulted and raped again. Now, sometime later, Leslie fell asleep, and the car traveled on down the road. I mean, they just carried on like nothing happened, right? These two were just fucking terrible people, and at no point did they let these girls go. Like, they could have just did whatever. I mean, it would have been horrible, but they could have just left them alive, right? And throughout this whole drive, they just continued on torturing them. And to me, like, it's just as traumatizing as the whole, like, rape thing and everything would have been. If you would have just left them and took off, they still would have been alive, right? I mean, I don't know, these two guys were just idiots there. They never had a single brain cell between them. Plus, they did know, like, that if they did let them go, there would have been a possibility that the two girls could have, ID'd them, right? So, the car traveled on here. Leslie fell asleep for a bit. When he woke up, he asked where they were, so he started mumbling some stuff about bridges. So, the driver dude here thinks that he wanted to toss the girls off of a bridge, and along the way there happened to be some bridges along their travels. Now, the two girls knew something was up because they were just completely terrified. And I mean, who wouldn't be, right? I mean, these good two guys here were just trash. So Leslie kept repeating the words, "They can't go back." And this here, like, he was referring to the girls, and he just wanted to disassociate himself with his part in the crimes by any means necessary. So coming up, this would actually be the girls' final stop, and this horrible trip would fucking come to an end, right? Like, they thought that they would keep their word and let them go eventually, right? But, I mean, you gotta think that there was a lot of fear instilled in these girls already from, like, what these guys had put them through. I mean, this went on all night. Driving, stopping, and knowing each time that something wicked shitty is gonna happen, right? Now, the time was around 8 a.m., so they stopped here at a place called Fiddler's Green Creek. So, when they stopped, the two were tied up, and they were told to start walking. So they were walking along like some rugged-ass terrain here up to a creek. So they followed the way up a little bit here. This would have been about 100 meters, so that was how far they walked up. Now, they were told to hop in the creek to wash themselves of any DNA evidence. Now, they reassured the girls that they were only going to be tied up just so that the two men could escape. So they played along. They planted the seed in their heads that they were going to let them go and shit, right? Just false hope kind of shit. Now, the girls' clothes had been removed, and they could wash away any evidence of the sexual assaults. So shortly after, they were told to lay on their stomachs, and then they were gagged and then retied. So the two were separated from one another at this point here. Leslie wanted to drown the girls in the creek. Using the elements would be a perfect way to plan this out, right? Beckett didn't want to do this, so he says, like, I don't want to do this or whatever. And Leslie threatened to kill him with a knife if he didn't follow his demands. So he was like, he was kind of put into the situation too, because he would have died if he didn't kill them, whatever, right? Now, the two girls couldn't move. They were just tied up with the rope, completely like hog-tied, whatever, right? So they had this rope that they had gotten from the car, so that's how they ended up restraining them. Now, Lauren was taken to a spot out of sight of Nicole, and then she was tied to a tree. Now, Lauren had asked again, like, if they were gonna die. Lindsay Beckett had ignored that question, and then he returned back to where his buddy Leslie was. So he was standing over there by the car, and then he was like, well, what's the next move kind of thing, right? So Lindsay Beckett went back to where Lauren was. He grabbed her, and he dragged her to the water, and held her head underwater. She was struggling a bit, and who wouldn't, right? It's just an instant reaction. Like, while she was struggling, she knocked Lindsay into the water there, so he got all pissed off because he got totally wet. So he opened up his knife, and he stabbed her in the left side of her neck, and then continued to stab her, and then she had stopped moving. So he had went back up to the bank where Nicole was now, and he took a walk to around the left side of her, and he cut her throat 2 or 3 times. So she began to thrash around on the ground, trying to scream with all her might, but due to the cuts, like to her throat being so deep and severe, no sound was coming out. So she was then kicked, and he put his foot on her to like keep her still, and it didn't work. So she was stabbed in the throat yet again, because he was aiming for her like windpipe, he recalls. So he pushed the knife all the way in, and she still didn't stop moving, and then she was stabbed in the chest. And this guy had used his 2 hands to stab her through her chest plate, but she kept moving around. But he ended up kicking her in the head again, and her movement was slowing down, and then she stopped moving. Now, the ropes that she was restrained with were untied, and he went back to the car, where the other guy was just sitting back here. So the guy just murdered both girls under the command of the other guy, Leslie. So the car was started up, and then the 2 men just fucking left the 2 girls' bodies out in the open. Didn't even try to like bury them or anything, or nothing. They just heartless. And like they didn't even fucking give them a proper burial. I don't know, just idiots. So over the course of the next few days here, the pair had they tossed all the evidence away or whatever, right? So they tossed the knives that they used on them there. They threw them in Burley. The pair burned the clothes of the women. They burned the clothes that they wore themselves for the crime. And then they stopped at Theodore Lookout, and they burned the ropes and the gags and stuff that they used to restrain them. So they ended up going here to clean the whole car down or whatever for any trace of them abducting the two girls. So they returned to the town of Yass, and this was only for a little bit here because they went to Sydney, Australia a little later on. But in the meantime, the family of the two girls had began to worry. Now her brother thought that they'd be back by now, and they weren't, and he had woke up in the morning here. So after the two guys Beckett and Camilleri here, they disposed of all the evidence, they burned everything. They ended up staying with the brother of Camarilli. So these guys here, they thought about that pink TV that they had placed on the side of the road too. Now this little beauty here was taken out of the car so the girls could get into their vehicle. So when the two men went back to that area here, the TV was already gone. Somebody had already taken it. So now these two idiots had left a key piece of evidence out in the open, and it was now in the possession of another person. Now around this time, the girls hadn't returned to the campground the next morning, so the family was worried, so they notified police. So the search and rescue squads, police, and other volunteers had searched for the missing girls. So they focused on a place called Evans Hill. This is located between Callaroo and Tathra. So local volunteer search squads and shit found a piece of Lauren's clothing down at Old Wallagoot Road. So they now knew something had happened to her. Now October 9th, the two families held a press conference about their two missing loved ones. And then October 25th, 1997 rolls around. Police spot a report of a stolen car. This was actually earlier stolen by Beckett. So he was later found, he was arrested, and this was on the 27th. So he was arrested for car theft charges and remanded. And then police had interviewed Leslie the very next day, so the cops asked him about the girls or whatever, and the two denied any knowledge of it. But the police had actually a little bit of info that they didn't know about. They knew about the pink TV from the public or whatever. So this info just got around to police or whatever, right? Because they knew that one had been found in the area close to a campground where the girls were visiting. So instantly they kind of thought these guys as suspects, right? But they didn't know who had the TV, so they made a news media report on it, and people came forward with some info. Now, on the night that Nicole and Lauren disappeared, Beckett had been seen in Bega with that TV in his car, and it was located in the back seat. So upon returning later on, the TV was gone, and, he had the TV when he left town. He didn't have the TV when he came back. So that was now a vital clue into this case. And it didn't take police long to figure out that the TV had been removed from the car to make room for the girls. Now, a council worker here had ended up coming forward because he seen the TV on the side of the road, so he picked it up and he took it to a garbage bin. But the bin was full, so he set it down next to the bin. But, he told police that, he put it down, he left, and then police went back, they searched the area for it, but it was already gone. So another appeal was made to the public here to now ask if somebody had taken the TV. And boom, a couple came forward with info that they found it by the dumpster. So they took it, and they had painted it black, and they sold it. But they didn't get a name of the buyer. So then the police made another appeal here, because they wanted to know who had purchased the TV. and a woman actually came forward. So she said that she had the TV. There was a pink paint still on it because it was kind of painted really shitty. And they checked the serial number on it, whatever, right? And everything matched. So the woman actually had the TV with her or whatever, right? So she had it on her. So good for her. So the police now had this new evidence here. So police had grilled Beckett with this, and he broke down and he confessed to the whole thing, the murders, everything. And Camilleri here, or Camilleri, whatever. He was 28 years old when all this went down. So when all these crimes were carried out, he was 28, yeah. And Beckett was 23 years old, so that little age gap there, I don't know, both men are of age to have known fucking better is what I think, right? I mean, they didn't have to do this stupid shit to these girls. And now police finally had some solid confession, So they had a lot of stuff to go off of now. And Beckett had agreed to take police out to the scene. This was down at Fiddler's Green Creek. So now the girls' remains were found, and this was November 12th, 1997, at around 10 p.m. by authorities. So Camilleri had been remanded into custody on other breaches. So he was interviewed yet again, and this time, the police told him what Beckett had been up to and about his confession. So he was like, fuck, what do I do now, right? But he denied having anything to do with their murders or anything, right? And I'm going to call bullshit on that. But he did, however, tell police that Beckett was the one who killed them. So he remembers that portion, right? So he's just trying to weasel dick his way out of this, right? So he told the police that he had been on a drug-induced stupor for most of this duration. So he didn't really remember anything, right? So he says here in a little combo that they had stating, quote, "We picked the girls up and went to the beach. I shot up behind a shed, and the girls were having some drinks. I tried to overdose. We drove around the girls, and I was asleep most of the time," he says. And then he tells them that Beckett had dropped them off at home, and then remembers waking back up and still seeing the girls. Then he nodded back off. Then it says here that they parked in the sticks, and he had asked Beckett where they were, and he replied with, "We're up in Victoria on the main road somewhere." And he says he told Beckett to drive, home, just get the fuck out of here, right? And then he seen Beckett come back to the parked car there when they were parked up in the sticks, and he had blood all over him, and he mentioned that he had cut his finger. But there was way too much blood for that to be a cut of the finger. But he actually did cut his finger when he was stabbing the girls. So it was a little miscalculation or whatever, right? So police had everything they needed now, right? And now these two idiots can now begin trial. So this was held by Justice Vincent. And everybody knew that these guys were full of shit here. So Beckett and Camilleri are now sentenced on June 26, 1998. So at the arraignment here, Beckett pled guilty to the murders of the two girls, and at his sentencing on August 20th, 1998, Justice Vincent spoke up about the two girls here. So he stated to Beckett that, "Lindsay Honey Beckett, you have pleaded guilty to the murder at Fiddler's Green Creek in the state of Victoria on October 6, 1997. Now, this is the murder of two young persons named Laura Margaret Berry and Nicole Emma Collins." He said here, "You represent the dark in which our women and children fearfully walk." And then he sentenced Beckett to life imprisonment. So this was for 2 life sentences, but since he had been cooperative with police, he confessed and he showed them where the bodies were. The judge did set a non-parole period for 35 years. Now Nicole's mom had stood up and said, "Yes," and Lauren's mom had told Beckett, "I hope you rot in hell," as he was taken away to jail by officers. So Friday, April 9th, 1999, this was after 7 weeks of on and off again trial here, Camilleri was also found guilty of murdering the girls. So he was read his verdict here. He actually let out a yawn, so he was totally uninterested here, so he showed zero amount of remorse for his crimes. So he was given the max sentence that was available in Australia, life in prison with no possibility of release on parole. So he was sent to prison and never to be released. So now these two violent criminals were just back in jail and whatever, and the fun didn't really stop here. Leslie was actually sentenced to an additional 28 years for the murder of a girl back in 1992. This was of another schoolgirl named Prudence Bird. She was nicknamed Prue Bird, so that's what her little nickname was. Now, she vanished from a Melbourne suburb here. This is up in Glenroy on February 2nd, 1992. And shitty thing here is her body has never been found. The guy doesn't remember where fucking he put her or whatever. He thinks that she's a couple places and they have checked certain spots over the years. Now, Prudence had been last seen very distressed and screaming for help while she was in the back of a light blue hatchback being driven away from her home. And people fucking saw this too. Her lunch was actually found at her home on a table in front of the TV, and her door was left wide open. And earlier that morning, her mom, saw her in bed and everything, so that was the last that she had seen of her daughter. So, it's crazy, they just went right into the fucking house, they took her, and they just peeled off. So, that's totally crazy, and it sucks that the poor girl isn't safe in her own fucking home. It's also thought here that Camilleri had grabbed the Prudence girl with a drug dealer named McConville, and that he had held her captive in a shed and then sexually assaulted her before he killed her. Now, Camilleri said that he acted alone, and that the murder was an accident. But this was after he hog-tied her with cables and threw her in the back of his car. So yeah, it was a big fucking accident that she ended up in the back of your car, you idiot. Now, Justice Elizabeth Curtin mentioned that she was a defenseless 13-year-old child snatched from her own home, and how terrifying all that must have been for her. So he was given a reduced sentence because he pleaded guilty. Searches were made for Prudence's body, like I previously mentioned. This is around the area that Barry and Collins were found. And the mother of Prudence said that she's given up all hope in finding her daughter's body. Now, Justice Elizabeth Curtin here had even asked Camilleri to just tell police where she was buried, kind of give the family closure or whatever. And sometimes, folks, closure doesn't fucking happen, and you just have to go on with your life, and it sucks, but what do you do, right? But that's the whole thing there, asking him to tell her where the body was, that didn't go anywhere. So he had apologized to Prue's mother here, Jenny Bird, for what he had put her through, and Mrs. Bird rejected his apology. And Prue Bird was murdered in Glenroy, Victoria on February 2nd, 1992. Now, the whole ordeal here, for the two girls that were murdered after this, fuck, that was a whole 9 to 12 hour period of being beaten and raped, and those poor girls endured nothing but hell. And the fear of that the entire fucking duration, that's gotta be a terrible thing to happen to anyone. And that's really gotta mess with your head too, because the repeated rapes and the sexual assaults and everything, the beatings that went on for these girls on 5 or more separate occasions. So what would they think? They'd drive and they'd think they'd be safe for a bit, and then they'd stop, and then think of all the panic that set in there, knowing that the whole thing was just going to happen over and over again. Now, Nathan Barry here, that's Lauren's older brother. So he was 17 years old at the time of his sister's disappearance, and then later finding out that she and her friend had been murdered had really messed with him over the years. Now, he mentions his earliest memory of him and his sister is playing together on their property in the town of Orange. Now, Orange is a town that's rich in, like, heritage. There's gardens, markets, like, you name it, right? Just a nice little spot. So they had a lot of fun growing up there, like playing hide and seek in the woods nearby. And the two had shared, like, a very special bond. But, you know, things happen in life and it sucks, I get it. But it took him some time to, like, get over it, to cope with everything, and he now has a family of his own. And he spends, like, as much time as he can with his sons and his wife. And he mentions that, like, having a family and all the responsibilities that roll along with it, it's a good thing, and I also agree on that. Because this actually helped him, like, open up and, like, cope with a lot of stuff over the years. Sometimes, you know, like we all do, like, we beat ourselves up over the fact that maybe something more could have been done, or, like, he could have helped them in some way to protect them or whatever. And, dude, like, I'll say right now, like, it's not your fault, man. Like, there's horrible people in this world, and I'm sorry things shook down as they did, but, you know, it's just a horrible whole fucking ordeal going on here, right? But these men are in jail now, like, for their crimes, so they can't hurt anybody else. And Lauren and Nicole actually have 2 rose gardens that were made up in their memory, along with, like, a couple of plaques. Now these say, Lauren and Nicole, God has them in his keeping. We have them in our hearts. So that right there is a cool little remembrance for the 2 ladies, so that's awesome. And with that, folks, I think I'm done with this whole case here. That's all the information that I have for you guys. And I know this case was rough, like, with the details and everything. It's just fucking, these guys are idiots, and yeah, I started this case and I just got into it, so I just kept going with it. And I wanted to tell you guys as, you know, much as I could from what I found online and, like, a documentary and everything else. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this case. So I'll have a few more for you here soon enough. I'm gonna have, like, Life and Times of the Three Stooges there. Melvin Skeet Jr. is another one I kind of got half-ass written up here, so I got to go through that too and talk to some people and get that one out there. So there's lots of stuff that I got in the works here. I'm just, you know, trying to deal with life and work and everything, right? So just stay tuned. I'll have a bunch of shit for you, and I'll have some collabs coming up, I guess, if I can ever make it on time. But yeah, no. So I thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll post one of my friends' podcasts here and a couple news clips about this case. So I appreciate you guys tuning back in. Take her easy.
Well, a 20-year murder mystery is drawing closer to a close in Victoria after Bega schoolgirl killer Leslie Camilleri admitted he's also responsible for the death of a 13-year-old girl. The Supreme Court heard the triple killer disputes aspects of the police case, leaving some questions still unanswered about the murder of Prue Burt.
He's one of the country's most notorious child killers. Leslie Camilleri is already serving life with no parole for murdering 2 schoolgirls. Now he's admitted to a court he's killed before.
Police are intensively searching for her bush grave in Far East Gippsland.
13-year-old Prue Burt disappeared 20 years ago. Today, Camilleri pleaded guilty to her murder. Prue's mother, Jenny, was in court.
Must have been a relief though to finally get a guilty.
Yes, that was good. Jenny Bird last saw her daughter at their Melbourne home in February 1992. Just recently, she made a fresh appeal for information. Prue's body has never been found.
She was 13, innocent little girl that someone has taken and murdered for nothing.
Earlier this year, police searched bushland in Victoria's Far East, the same area where Camilleri and Lindsay Beckett dumped the bodies of 2 New South Wales teenagers in 1997. Bega schoolgirls Lauren Barry and her friend Nicole Collins were abducted, raped and murdered. Their deaths are still remembered as one of Australia's most horrific crimes. What was it like to see him today?
Awful as always.
For 2 decades, Prue Bird's family has lived without knowing exactly when, where or how their daughter's life came to an end. And they still don't know why. Investigators previously believed Prue was killed as payback for Melbourne's Russell Street bombings because a relative gave evidence against those behind the 1986 attack. Today, prosecutors said they no longer believed that to be the case. Details about what happened to Prue are expected to emerge when the case returns to Victoria's Supreme Court in February.
I'm Bryony.
And I'm Sam.
We have a true crime podcast called Trusting Evil,
in which we focus on crimes around domestic violence, child abductions,
murder cases and much more.
We are straight talking,
but love a bit of banter,
and we do not shy away from the details that other podcasts might, so we are not for the faint of heart.
We want to get all the information to you and name and shame the monsters that carry out such heinous crimes.
You can find us on the majority of streaming platforms
by searching Trusting Evil, and feel free to follow us on Facebook.
Twisted Tales.